The trade desk is one growth stock down 46% that I think you might regret not buying on this dip. In this video, I'm going to explain why I think that's the case, so let's begin right away. One of the reasons why I think the trade desk is such an excellent stock is because of its phenomenal revenue growth over the years. If I pull out the revenue over the last 5 years, you can see quarterly revenue has expanded from less than 150 million all the way up to 490 million in its most recent update. Now, the trade desk, especially impressively, has grown revenue nicely since 2022, despite the industry-wide slowdown in advertising spending. So ad spending has slowed down since in 2022. I mean, it did grow, but around 8% for the year in 2022, while the trade desk grew revenue at near 4 times that at 30%. So the trade desk is gaining market share as globally advertisers are shifting a greater portion of their spending to digital channels, right? Less spending on legacy channels like newspapers, billboards, and things like that, where it's more difficult to measure the return on investment, and more spending on digital channels like connected TV, which is more easy to measure that return on investment. You could see how many people watched your advertisement, how many people changed the channel during your advertisement, how many people went online after your advertisement was shown during a sporting event on a connected TV device. So all of those forms of measurement allows marketers to better gauge what return on investment they're getting, and clearly they're getting a good return on investment because they keep diverting more spending to digital channels away from legacy channels. So that's all been great news for the trade desk, and this trend is likely to persist longer term, and so the trade desk is an excellent position to capitalize on that. One more thing I will add here is the trade desk is in its early stages of growing in this market. You see here its revenue in the most recent quarter, 490 million. Now $490 million is a lot, but when you compare that to the overall size of the advertising industry, which is around $900 billion, you realize that the trade desk is still a small player in the overall market, while it's growing at 4 times the rate of the market. So it's got room to continue growing. If it continues at this rate, it's not going to hit a ceiling anytime soon. All right, another reason why I think investors might regret not buying the trade desk stock on the dip is because the company does a good job of turning sales into cash flow. You see here I have a chart of its sale cash flow from operations to sales over the trailing 12 months. 34.78% most recently, and that's been moving upward since 2018. The company's doing a good job of increasing the scale of cash flow that turns into cash flow from operations from sales as its revenue has been growing. So here is something that I wanted to highlight as a potential risk, but also it's not such a big risk when the figure is positive. So let me explain. Operating profit margin over the trailing 12 months has been declining for the trade desk since 2017. Now, I usually highlight that this is a big negative, but this is more so the case when the figure is negative. So if you've got an operating profit margin that's negative and declining, that's a big risk to the company, and that's a big red flag to investors, and I typically tell my viewers to avoid these kinds of stocks. However, when the operating profit margin is declining but the figure is positive, it's less of a red flag. It's less of a red flag in that case because the figure is still positive. The company's still generating a positive operating profit margin. And the immediate next thing I ask viewers to look at when you see this declining operating profit margin is to check the cash flow. Check the cash flow, see if it's also declining, because if both of them are declining and moving in tandem to the bottom and they're both negative, that's a big red flag. So let's go back here. The trade desk, it's positive and it's moving in the right direction. It's positive and moving in the right direction. So while I don't like to see this downward moving operating profit margin, the figure is still positive, and when I double check with the cash flow from operations, I see a positive figure moving upward. So while this figure is not great news for investors, it's less of a risk because the cash flow from operations is positive, significantly positive, and moving in the right direction. And also this has turned around and started moving back upward, which is another good sign, although I would like to see more of a trend of it moving upward rather than just one blip upward. So this is just something to keep in mind, although I don't think it should discourage investors from buying the trade desk stock on the dip. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now. And finally, the last reason I'll give to buy the trade desk stock on this dip here is because of the relatively inexpensive valuation. Now I say relatively inexpensive because it's only inexpensive when you're evaluating it based on its own history. So looking at the trade desk's past, this stock has scarcely been selling at a forward price to earnings ratio of around 41. It only started trading at this valuation, I would say, starting in mid 2022. Before then, it was trading at a much higher valuation, 80, 60, 70 forward price to earnings ratio. And now you're able to buy it at a forward price to earnings ratio of 41.16, which is not cheap when you look at it by itself. But when you consider the company is growing so rapidly, has a massive total addressable market, has industry tailwinds supporting it, and has a long runway for growth, and is increasing market share by nearly 3x, you've got a lot of reasons why you should be willing to pay a premium valuation for this growth stock. All right, so that's all I've got for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I picked out a video that I think you'll enjoy that's popping up on your screen right here. So please click on that and I'll see you over there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your viewership.